Welcome back to day 4 of Commander Master Spoils. We got even better cards today than we did the last few days, and I don't know how that's possible. It's just incredible. The amount of value that we're getting in this set is unbelievably good. So let's start out by looking at those artifacts, lands, and enchantments. So first off, we have Grave Pact. An enchantment, whenever a creature you control dies, each other player sacks a creature. This just basically beats down your opponents really hard because you're making the little creatures a sack, but they're not, so you're gonna win if you have this card out. Next up, we have Doubling Season and Song of the Dryads. Doubling Season, really? This is so cool. This is like $100 plus card. Doubling Season is so powerful. I can't believe it's being reprinted. I'm glad it's being reprinted. This is really great. And then Song of the Dryads just turns a permanent into a colorless forest land. So turn any of your opponent's stuff into just a useless land, which is pretty neat. Next up, we have Darksteel Mutation, and this has a really cool art to it. And basically you just turn a creature into a 0/1, kind of similar to the Dryad enchantment we just had. But Darksteel Mutation, excellent, very cool card. And another great card with another very cool art is Bloodchief Ascension. This is such a cool card in a mill deck. Whenever a card is put into an opponent's graveyard from anywhere, if Chief Ascension has 3 quest counters on it, that player loses 2 life. Just incredible. You know, discard mill deck, this is just whenever a card is put into an opponent's graveyard. So this is such a cool card. It's a really cool combo piece. It takes a little bit to get it going, but after that, you're just dealing damage. And last up, we have Scyther Claw. This is one of those cards that whenever it deals combat damage, your opponents lose half their life. So this can be really effective in the early game when they have a lot of life, or potentially in the later game if they're a life gain deck. But as it gets closer to the end of the game, this becomes less powerful, but still a cool reprint. Maybe it'd be really fun to get in draft. This might be a cool way to win. Next up, we're gonna move into instant and sorceries, and we have Flawless Maneuver. This is the next free spell if you have your commander. Flawless Maneuver isn't the most expensive, but this alternate art with Teysa Karlov is one of my favorites. She's a really cool character, one of my favorite characters. I've built a couple decks with her, so this is a great card. Next up, we have Toxic Deluge and Arachnogenesis, and both of these cards are super powerful, and Toxic Deluge just got reprinted in the Food and Fellowship commander deck, but it's still pretty pricey, and Arachnogenesis shot up in price because of Shelob, and basically this is such a good card. It's a instant one-sided board wipe potentially in any Shelob deck, and this is just so cool. This card was hovering around $30 and then spiked, and it sits right now around $50 because of Shelob as a commander, so this definitely needed a reprint. Next up, we have Days Undoing and Exsanguinate. Exsanguinate is a really powerful card if you have a lot of mana to dump into it, so this is pretty cool. And I don't know who that character is on there, but I'd like to figure it out because it's real neat. And next up, we do have Deflecting Swat, another one of those free cast spells. Deflecting Swat is, I think, the second most expensive, and I believe on the alternate art we have Corvold there, which is just super fun. I definitely want to pick up this copy. I have never built a Corvold deck, but I know just how powerful he is, and anybody who sees this is just going to be so excited to see Corvold sitting on Deflect and Swat. Next up, we have Reality Shift. It's pretty cool blue instant. Basically, we can exile a creature and that player manifests the top card, which is pretty cool because we can essentially get rid of their best thing and just give them a 2/2 that can't flip over unless it's a creature, so pretty nice. And we have Sublime Exhaustion and Divergent Transformation. These are pretty cool. We have 2 Undaunted cards, which is similar to the one I showed off yesterday, which this spell costs 1 less for each opponent. They're pretty much better when all 4 opponents are around because they're cheaper to cast. 1 destroys all creatures. 1 is basically a Chaos Warp, but you get a creature out of it, so that's potentially pretty cool, especially if you can cast this on your own stuff to get something better out. Might be a cool deck to build around. And then after that, we have Tooth and Nail. I've never played this card, but reading through it, it's pretty cool. So for 7 mana, you can search your library for up to 2 creature cards, or you can put up to 2 creature cards from your hand onto the battlefield. And if you pay the additional 2 to entwine them, you can do both. Basically finding and putting out your 2 best creatures for 9 mana, which in green, you know, you could have 2 8-drops, so that actually works out pretty well. Moving on, we have Yuzuri's Predation and Imp's Mischief. Yuzuri's Predation is a super strong card. It can basically swing the tide of a game for any green player because it makes a 4/4 Phyrexian that fights every creature on the battlefield you don't control. And Imp's Mischief can basically change the target of a spell, which is super powerful. Whether it's targeting you or an opponent, you can basically redirect that any way you want, and you just take a little damage off it, but that's pretty cool. Next up, we have Kodama's Reach, and it looks like we have a Kodama actually on the art. This is so much fun. This Kamigawa sort of, you know, inspiration that we see here in the picture with the little floating dudes next to Kodama there is super fun. This is definitely a card I need need to get. Not that I don't have any Kodama's reaches, but just seems really cool. And next up we have Steel Shaper's Gift with a really cool alternate art. And I love the flavor text on this. A good blacksmith will craft the weapon you ask for. A master will craft the weapon you dream of. So this is really cool. I know Steel Shaper's Gift is a pretty popular card, so this alternate art probably is going to be pretty expensive, but I'm glad to see this getting reprinted. It's a very powerful card. And now our last instant and sorcery card is Sevine's Reclamation, which basically can return a permanent with mana value 3 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield, and if it was cast from your graveyard, then you get to do it twice. So really cool card. This is definitely cool. I don't know if we're getting any special art, but we are getting this cool foil etched version, and that's enough to celebrate. Moving on to the creatures, we have Ogre Slumlord and Vindictive Lich. Pretty cool creatures. I don't play any of the Liches because they can go really bad really quickly, but yeah, that's really cool. And then next up we have two more huge creatures with Runescar Demon and Craterhoof Behemoth. Runescar Demon basically is a tutor whenever he enters, and Craterhoof Behemoth is one of Green's best win cons. I was really hoping we were going to get a reprint of this because I know he's been going up in value, and I so much hope we get a cool alternate art for him because I love playing this card, and if there is one of those, I would definitely love to pick it up. Next up we have Bloodspore Threnak and Heavenly Blade Master. Two pretty cool cards. And then lastly for creatures, I know we went through those pretty quickly, but that's because we have a ton of legendary creatures to talk about next. We have Stonehoof Chieftain, which has Trample and Indestructible, and whenever he attacks, and he gives another creature Trample and Indestructible until end of turn. So pretty neat card, pretty big creature. You know, this could definitely be a game ender in any draft or, you know, potentially in a commander deck. So very much looking forward to that. And before we dive into those legendary creatures, if you aren't subscribed to my channel, please do so. I'm going to be putting out a Commander Master spoiler video every day until the end of spoiler season. If you haven't seen any of the other videos I've done this week, go check them out on my channel. But in addition to that, I do Commander deck techs, set reviews, all sorts of other fun content, and I'm trying to get into doing some live content. So if that's something you're interested in, please check back in a few days because I'm working on that currently. Now, diving into these legendary creatures, we have some really great reprints, and we're going to start off with Yuriko, the Tiger Shadow, and Yennett, Cryptic Sovereign. Yuriko, I don't think it's had a reprint in a number of years, and this is just a really great one to get, so super excited about that. And Yennett is a pretty interesting commander. If you've never played it before, you kind of have to build around it, but it's a pretty cool card to build around, so that's really great. Our next two legendary creatures are Zancha, Sleeper Agent, and Razakath, the Foul-Blooded. Zancha is a fun card that basically your opponents can interact with, which is pretty neat, but Razakath, the Foul-Blooded is a tutor on a stick. You can pay 2 life and sack a creature to go get whatever card you want out of your library. I don't see this card being built as a commander as much because it's really useful in the 99. There's a lot of ways to cheat it out earlier than turn 8, and it's really powerful, so that's really cool to see that being reprinted. Next up, we have one of my favorite cards ever printed, Avacyn, Angel of Hope, and we also have Rafine of the Many. Avacyn was last reprinted in Double Masters, the original, and I very much hope we get a super great special art for this card because she deserves it. She's one of my favorite creatures ever printed, and she's honestly the inspiration for the art on my channel if you check out my logo, so I would really love to get a copy if she has some special art to her. After that, we have Sun Quan, Lord of Wu, and Audric, Master Tactician. San Juan, Lord of Wu is actually a pretty expensive card because he gives all creatures you control horsemanship, which basically means they're unblockable because unless you have horsemanship, you can't block them. So this is a really cool way in blue to basically just win the game. You know, if you have enough creatures on the board where you can just swing out and win, that's really cool. Or if your strategy involves, you know, not being able to be blocked like Yuriko, then this is a great card to add to it. Next up, we have Hamza, Guardian of Arishin, and Zakama, Primal Calamity. Two very big and powerful creatures that well deserve a reprint. And I'm hoping we maybe get another Zakama / Galta in this new upcoming Ixalan set later this year. So maybe we're gonna get an updated version, maybe something a little more playable that isn't 9 mana, but I understand it's a 9/9 and has a lot of good abilities, so you know, it's gotta be that expensive. Now we have Sakiko, Mother of Summer, and Perforos, God of the Forge. I bet I just butchered that name and I'm very sorry, but I've never seen this card before, and that the fact that it's getting a reprint is actually pretty cool because whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to a player, add that much green mana. Until end of turn, you don't lose this mana as steps and phases end. This is a commander I've never really seen, but I'm really curious to build around because there's so many more X spells in Magic now that with your big green creatures, you can swing in for a ton of damage and then cast a giant green spell. So I'm really looking forward. I might build a deck around this. Perforos, God of the Forge is a super good card because whenever another creature enters the battlefield under your control, it deals 2 damage to each opponent. So if you're playing a deck that makes a lot of creatures, damage tokens, this is a very easy way to win the game. Next up, we have Azumi, Lady of Scrolls, in Zalortha, Strength Incarnate. And I did talk about Azumi, but I really want to show off this alternate art we got for her. It's pretty neat. She definitely looks a lot better than a lot of the cards. She just has a lot of detail to her, which makes her really interesting to look at, so I really like that. And Zalortha, or Godzilla, if you didn't play any of the Ikoria sets, is a really powerful card that just turns all of your creatures with large power and small butts into very powerful creatures, because and now lethal damage dealt to creatures you control is determined by their power rather than their toughness, so that's really cool. And next up, we have Teysa Karlov, one of my favorite creatures. This is a very powerful version of Teysa. There's a couple of them, and hopefully when we go back to Ravnica, we would get another version of her, but she's one of my favorite cards, you know? Orzhov is a pretty cool color combo, especially in Ravnica, so really love this reprint. I'm definitely gonna pick this up. And now we have Rankle, Master of Pranks, in Marin of Clan Nel Toth, which is one of my good friend's favorite commander. She is a super powerful commander who plays with the graveyard a lot, and there's a lot of really cool ways you can build her that don't just involve a similar strategy. You know, you're still gonna use that graveyard, but what kind of creatures are you getting out? Are you getting creatures that have death triggers? Are you getting creatures that have ETB triggers? You know, all sorts of stuff. So I love this card. And now we have Talran Sky Summoner and Safara Sky's Blade. Both of these can be really oppressive commanders if you can get them out and start triggering them a lot. Talran can make a lot of blue drakes that can overpower your opponents, and Safara can make all your stuff indestructible that is flying. In addition, you can pay just a white mana and tap 4 creatures to cast her, which is super cool, and I'm not sure if that gets around the commander tax, but she is a great card for any deck that has a lot of flyers. And our last 2 legendary creatures are Twilight Prophet and Myri, Weatherlight Duelist. These are both really cool cards. Twilight Prophet is really great if you can get the Ascend, which you probably will be able to, and at the beginning of your upkeep, if you have the City's Blessing, reveal the top card of your library and then put it into your hand. Each opponent loses X life and you gain X life, where X is that card's converted mana cost. This is a pretty cool card if you can play with the top of your deck, especially if you have something like Scroll Rack, because you can just put the same big card on top and you will gain a ton of life and make your opponents lose a ton every turn. So it's potentially very deadly. And that's it for Commander Masters today. That was a ton of cards, a ton of very, very powerful cards, and I'm just so excited to start playing this. I honestly wasn't that excited when spoiler season started, but seeing all the great cards that they actually put in this, I'm very impressed. That's really good, Wizards. You did a really great job there. Thank you so much for watching. If you've been enjoying these videos, you know, that just makes me so happy. I've gotten so many great comments from my viewers saying, you know, they really enjoy these. I really appreciate that. It really does make my day. And if you enjoyed this, please consider subscribing. You know, I work hard on these, and for all the reasons I listed earlier, I'm going to continue to do these until the end of spoiler season. But thank you so much. If there's anything you want me to do videos on, please leave in the comments down below. I always like to take that into consideration. And if you enjoyed this, please leave a like. That would help me out a lot. And today's Scryfall card of the day is Kessig Flame Breather. Hunter's Fire was meant for slaying monsters in the Uvenwald, but that never stopped Raylan from showing it off. Thank you so much for watching, and as always, I'll see you later, Planeswalkers.